This is the very slide I was showing in April of 2010 when we introduced the Alexa at the NAB trade show in Las Vegas. And I pulled this out because up to this day, those 4 bullet points still are the strong points of the Alexa, which makes the Alexa a very popular camera. Now, in addition, we've added a whole bunch of things along the way, and technology has changed. But the Alexa still is the best camera for all the new technologies, for high dynamic range, for 4K, for high frame rate, wide color gamut, and anamorphic shooting. In fact, for anamorphic shooting, the Alexa is a unique camera because it has a very tall sensor. Most other cameras have a 16:9 sensor or even wider sensor. So if you want to shoot anamorphic, you need to take a portion out of the center, and that becomes really, really small. Since the Alexa has a very tall sensor, in fact, as tall as 35mm film used to be, you get the same focal length, or you get the same field of view for the same focal length on anamorphic lenses, and so the Alexas are the perfect cameras to shoot anamorphic with. We also invented a whole bunch of other things along the way, including the ProRes 3.2K recording format. We have a whole bunch of online tools, and of course the ARRI service worldwide. Now, Alexas are being used all over the world right now. This is in Germany, beautiful, bright, fair, nice Germany. The crew looked really horrible after the shoot. The camera was fine. This was Uli Steiger, ASC, shooting a feature film in Germany. This is a show from India, Bahubali. This was the largest Indian movie. It's kind of the Lord of the Rings of India. I watched it recently. It's a little bit of an acquired taste if you're from the Western world, but very interesting, beautiful imagery. And they shot with an ALEXA XT with master primes and recorded ARRI RAW open gauge. Here we have Ikari. It's a Japanese television series that was shot with the ALEXA XT. And here we have Lost in Hong Kong in China, shot by a Chinese DP using a regular Alexa. Of course, my wife's favorite television show, Downton Abbey, shot in England in the beautiful Downton Abbey, the beautiful palace, very popular. And then my favorite television show, Game of Thrones, shot in Ireland with Alexas. Now, what's interesting is that when the first Alexa came off the production line, HBO was just starting to do the very first season, the very first episode of Game of Thrones. So they started with some of the very, very first Alexas on this show, and kind of in parallel, the Alexas became popular and Game of Thrones became popular. Now, as a perk to my job, I go to visit them once a year, which is a lot of fun. I actually sat on the throne, and it's really disappointing. It's all rubber. All the swords are rubber. It looks like cast iron, but it's all rubber. But anyway, very good, and it's a good relationship with HBO because they're very technical. They do an extensive camera test every year, and they give us a lot of feedback on what we can improve on the camera. And maybe that'll be one of the through lines for today. One of the things we try very, very hard is to go to the sets. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to go visit some sets here in Paris. Go to the set, talk to the DPs, see what the issues are, and then change the camera to make it a better tool for the DPs. So a lot of the changes we have come from the guys from Game of Thrones. It's a huge production, lots of camera people, lots of DITs, and other sets. And then here we have, what's it called? Blind Spot. It's a television series shot in New York with an Alexa. And then here, this is in Chile, Checo Varese shooting the 33. They also shot in the mines of Colombia, which was a really, really difficult place to shoot, down in an actual mine. Again, the crew was doing okay, the camera was just fine. And of course, Chivo, Emmanuel Lubeski, shooting The Revenant in Canada, in Calgary, about 70% with ALEXA XT and XTM, and 30% with the ALEXA 65. So Alexas are being used all around the world, and we have called all our salespeople and asked them to send us some footage, and we put this together to a little show reel that can show you some of the footage generated all over the world by Alexas. And the one thing I think you should pay attention to is there are a lot of very different looks in the show reel. The Alexa records a very, very, and for lack of a better term, very thick negative. All you film guys will know what I mean by that. It just means there's a lot of meat on the bone. There's a lot of information in the file that you can then use to make a whole bunch of different looks.
in it to win it, never ever sleep in it. Get what you want, if you think it, you can live it. Sweet like nectar from a bumblebee sting, sweating from the thought of your sun-kissed skin.
This is Jason Bourne. I need to talk.
You gotta put me on, I'm kinda in a rush, got to the end of the song. To show you, I mean, tell you things you ain't never heard. Like mellifluous, and that's an actual word. It means sweet sounding, forget your surroundings. You should be here, but you're living in your mind. Entertaining thoughts that are counterproductive to what I want most, that's for you to be mine. Open up blinds, all I saw was sunshine. I'm going off topic, yeah, that happens sometimes. When you're running out of space, cause you're trying to kill time. Look me in my eyes, tell me why you're trying to hide.
You want me, baby, I know that you do. Yeah, I've been looking, girl, and I've been looking.
Now that's a proper introduction.
You gotta put me on, put me on.
Destined to do more than I imagine, and make a movie like I am legend. And when I die, I perform in heaven. I am the answer, so now making it is out the question. Destined to do more than I imagine, and make a movie like I am legend. Destined to do more than I imagine.
If they turn the lights off, I still be shining. Get your hands up, get your hands up. If they turn the lights off, I still be shining.
Put them hands up, put them hands up. We party every day and everybody put your hands up.
All right, so the topic today here is the ALEXA SXT. That's the latest generation of Alexa. Now, what's in the ALEXA SXT? When we developed the ALEXA 65, we made sure that it uses the same size electronics as the regular Alexa, so the ALEXA SXT now also has the electronics that the ALEXA 65 has. Since the ALEXA 65 uses a lot more photosites on the sensor, that means we have a lot more horsepower now in the electronics. Similarly, we've taken the noise reduction and the color management from the Amira and the Alexa Mini, and we also have a new side cover which can accept new type of drives. And we'll be talking about all that in more detail. There are 3 different types of Alexa SXT. There's the SXT EV, the SXT Plus, and the SXT Studio. There's not an SXT M anymore because the Alexa Mini replaces the M. Now let's look at the main features. There are 6 main features on the Alexa, and we'll be going through those in detail just so you can get familiar with what the camera can do. Starting with the new recording formats. There were 7 recording formats in the Alexa XT, and we have added another 7 for the Alexa SXT. So now we have a recording format for every type of budget, every type of production. And in the second part of this presentation, I will go in detail through the recording formats. So we'll skip the recording formats for now. Second new feature is the new ARRI look management. Since the D20 days, we've looked very carefully at how do people want to show their look. And I think the important thing is how can a cinematographer show the look on the set, and how can that look get preserved throughout the whole post-production stage so people don't mess with the look of the cinematographer. And what we have done is we've now, for the Alexa SXT and the Amira and the Mini, come up with a complete look management system from the set to post-production. And this allows you to maintain and share what the DP has intended. It makes a wide range of looks possible, and it's the exact same thing for the Alexa SXT, the Alexa Mini, and the Amira. Now, once you have the system, there are 3 ways this can be used. It can be used on the set, it can be used during the dailies, and it can be used in editing. First, let's look, though, of what this consists of. The Alexa look management, the key to it, the heart of it, is a new look file. It's called the ARRI look file. And that look file contains the target color space. It contains the American Society of Cinematographers color decision list, the ASC CDL, and it contains a 3D lookup table, a 3D LUT. Now, I'll come back to the target color space. You may ask, what is that? When you shoot anything, you have a target in mind. You either want to shoot a feature film that's being shown in a movie theater, or you're going to shoot something that will be shown on television. Each one of those uses different display color spaces. And let's say you shoot a feature film, that will be shown in the DCI P3 color space in the movie theaters. So when you create this look file, you say, my target color space is DCI P3. And that way the camera knows that's where you ultimately want to go. And we're just going to put that aside right now. Remember that, because we'll come back to that later. This file will be included with all the metadata. So whenever you record ARRI RAW or ProRes, you always get this look file automatically in the metadata. And we can also transport vendor-specific information. For instance, the guys at Filmlight, they can do windowing and secondary color correction on the set. And that information isn't part of a 3D lookup table, but we have a special space where they can store that information so it can actually travel into post-production, which is a lovely thing. Now, the way to create these new look files is through the ARRI Color tool, which is a piece of software you can download for free from our website. That allows you to create and edit these ARRI look files, and it also allows you to import 3D lookup tables and to export 3D lookup tables. So we're compatible with any kind of format of 3D lookup table that is out there. Now, once we had all this, we realized, we're not alone in the world. We work in the whole workflow, the people you work with. There is software for on-set color correction, software for dailies creation, post-production software. So we took everything we've come up with and we packaged it in software libraries that we made available for free to all these other vendors. So they can include it into their tools. And I was very, very pleased before we even had introduced the ALEXA SXT, a large number of vendors had already taken our software and ran with it and did some wonderful things with it. And I'll be showing you some of that in a second. Now, let's talk about the applications. There's 3 places where this becomes important. The first one is live grading on the set. Right now on the set, a lot of times when you do live grading, which you don't have to, but some people choose to, so those people, they use a lookup box, a LUT box on the set. Well, you don't need that with the ALEXA anymore. It replaces the LUT box. You can actually connect the laptop to the camera and then change the CDL values and do some live color correction right there on the set. This allows you to show and fine-tune the cinematographer's intended look right there on the set, and there are a large number of companies that already support this, including Pomfret Live Grade, Codex Live, Colorfront, Filmlight, Technicolor, and a whole bunch of others are coming that already understand this and can talk to the camera. Now let's look at how this used to work. If you had a Classic or an XT, right here, you would send an ungraded log-C image to the LUT box. The laptop would talk to the LUT box to change the CDL values most of the time, and then you would send a graded Rec. 709 image to an on-set monitor. Now, for dailies creation, let's say you're shooting an ARRI RAW show, you would send the ARRI RAW to the dailies creation, wherever the dailies are being made, but then you also had to separately get the CDL and the 3D LUT in order to put the same look on the dailies. And the same holds true for final color grading. ARRI RAW and the look information travel separately, which means they can get lost, things can get confused, different file names are there. It was a little bit of a mess. So with this new look management with the ALEXA SXT, the laptop talks directly to the ALEXA. There's a LUT box essentially built into the ALEXA. And then you can get a graded Rec. 709 or even Rec. 2020 image out to your on-set monitor. Once you do your dailies, the ARRI RAW together with the look metadata travels to the daily stage, and your dailies get created automatically with the look. You don't even have to do anything. Colorfront OSD, for instance, understands our look file, and they will automatically apply that. So whatever the cinematographer saw on the set, now the director will see in dailies automatically. And the same holds true for final color grading. Again, the ARRI RAW travels together with the look file metadata, and in final color grading, they can look at the image, they can say, all right, let's see what you saw on the set, and then you like it or you don't, you may throw it away, start from scratch, but at least you have the option of seeing it right there. Before we move on, maybe Julien can tell us a little bit about why you would want to do color grading on the set and how he has done that in the past.
Thank you. Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Julien Bachelier, je suis d'IT essentiellement sur les pubs et les longs métrages. Et j'ai eu l'habitude depuis à peu près 12 ans en tant que DIT de travailler avec l'ALEXA. Et les avancements de la SXT m'arrangent vraiment. Donc par rapport au look management, effectivement plus besoin de lootbox, on peut piloter alors via un câble Ethernet la caméra, faire un étalonnage, genre par exemple ça, et le réenvoyer directement ce qui va s'inscrire dans l'ARRI ou dans le ProRes en métadonnées. Alors vous me dites ouais c'est sympa mais il y a un câble et tout ça. Apparemment ils développent un Wi-Fi routeur, d'autres personnes le font aussi, donc on pourra aussi l'avoir en Wi-Fi. Si jamais, donc ça peut être très pratique pour une config studio, après si jamais on part au milieu de la pampa, ça devient un peu plus compliqué, mais le nouveau look files de l'ALEXA quand même est vraiment pratique, d'une part parce qu'on peut intégrer d'autres choses que d'autres softwares peuvent générer. Là par exemple j'utilise LiveGrade Pomfort. J'utilise aussi le flip qui va maintenant devenir le Prelight auprès de Filmlight, où effectivement on fait des masques, on rajoute des secondaires et on peut vraiment les réintégrer au look files ou directement aux métadonnées de l'ARRI ou du ProRes. Et pour le coup ça devient beaucoup plus pratique. Le dernier film que j'ai fait, on n'était pas encore sur la SXT, je devais donc accompagner ça d'une 3DL et mes rushs partaient un peu partout, Canada, Nouvelle-Zélande, États-Unis, pour travailler avec différentes personnes. Et du coup, il fallait que je vérifie bien que les rushs soient bien accompagnés des CDL ou des 3DL qui se baladaient un peu partout. Et j'avais vraiment peur que ça se perde en chemin. On sait tout ce que c'est que Internet, les transports ou autre. Donc, thanks to Al.
Thank you. All right, now next is the dailies creation. So you've shot something and now you want to make your dailies. Again, the dailies software understands our look file, and so when you do the dailies creation, they can automatically apply the look file, and so the dailies show the same thing the cinematographer now saw on the set, which is very, very convenient. And then third, we even have editing. We've talked to Adobe, Apple, and Avid, and their editing software now also supports this. So the same thing the cinematographer saw on the set, the same look the director saw on the dailies, now the editor also sees in editing, and everything is automatic. You actually don't have to do anything. It happens by default. And I think that's really how it should be. You shouldn't have to do anything. This stuff should happen automatically. We should take care of the technique, of the technology, and you should just say, this is the look I want, and then that look travels transparently throughout the whole chain. So this is a wonderful thing with the new look management. We have a white paper on this that you can look at on the ARRI website in the download section that explains not only the look management in detail, but also a whole bunch of color science terms. What is a color space? What is a 1D lookup table? What is a 3D lookup table? What's the difference? If you've been curious about that, take a look at that white paper. Next, we're going to look at the on-set monitoring. I think on-set monitoring is very, very important because on the set you want to see what kind of image do you get, and that can speed up your work. It can make you more efficient. And there are 4 things we changed in the ALEXA SXT for on-set monitoring, and we'll be going through each one of them now. Starting with high dynamic range. There will be a lot more information, a lot more information about high dynamic range in the 3rd session today. But let's just say for now that the Alexas have been capturing a high dynamic range image since they were first introduced, since 2010. However, now the display technology has caught up, and we can actually show you this image that the camera captures right there on the set. There are special look files you need to download to use high dynamic range monitors on the set. They're available from our website, and people are now starting to monitor high dynamic range on the set. In fact, I think Julien has a show coming up that wants to do high dynamic range monitoring on the set. So you're going to see that more and more coming. And the ALEXA SXT is prepared for that. The same holds true for the ALEXA Mini and the Amira. They can also support high dynamic range monitoring. Next are 4 independent monitor outputs. Before I do that, maybe Julien wants to say why you would want that and how painful it is when you don't have that.
Peut-être plus encore que le look management, ça paraît dérisoire, mais j'ai vraiment adoré cette avancée parce que mes copains, qui étaient les premiers assistants caméra, je me battais souvent avec eux, parce qu'ils voulaient tout le temps du Rec 709. Moi, le chef-op en voulait du log-C pour pouvoir retravailler l'image. Et sur les anciennes XT, quand on était en open gate, les sorties étaient toutes clonées. Donc il fallait Alors, par exemple, j'imposais du coup un log C, il fallait que je mette des lootbox sur les moniteurs des pointeurs qui pouvaient créer des fois des légers délais. Après, ça allait à peu près. Mais là, tout de suite, ça devient vraiment agréable. Chacun peut avoir sa sortie. Un réalisateur peut avoir une sortie clean sans aucune information, alors que le pointeur peut avoir toutes les informations caméra ARRI 709. Moi, je peux virer la plupart des infos, garder mon frameline, être en log C ou en look file. Et on se bat plus, quoi. On s'entend un peu plus sur le plateau, c'est cool.
All right, so the goal is the right image for each crew member, and we have four image paths going through the camera, totally independent. There's the electronic viewfinder, there are 3 monitor outs, and on the plus in the studio camera, monitor out 1 also comes as a clone called monitor out 1B, so that is available twice, monitor out 1. The way it works is in the camera you can do independent settings for each monitor out 1. For instance, for each of these 4 image paths, you can set, is it going to show you a log C image, is it going to show you the look file, or is it going to show you a Rec 709 image. Also for each one of those you can adjust. If you want to see surround view, frame lines, peaking, false color, you can turn that on and off independently for each of these 4 files. And then you can also output as different color space, and we'll get to that in a second. Here's an example of what this might look like. The operator might want to see an image with the look that the DP intends. The operator will want to see frame lines, will want to see some custom information, and the surround view. Now the assistant, they need to pull focus. They don't want to see some fuzzy look, so they want to see a Rec 709 on the onboard monitor. They want to see frame lines, surround view, some information, and maybe also some of the LDS information, so they know exactly what's going on with the lens. The DIT, they don't want to see any of this stuff. They want to get a clean log C image, so they can then apply their own look to that log C image. And then, of course, the director, big shot director, they have all the money, so they get the expensive new Rec 2020 monitor. They want to see a Rec 2020 image with the custom look applied, probably the frame lines, but nothing else. The camera can now deliver all 4 images to these 4 crew members, and we've actually set that up here. You see the Rec 709 image here, you see the log C image here, and then Julien has given me a black and white look for this monitor, and that comes from this camera right now. Now, I was telling you earlier that when you make a look file, you tell the camera what the target color space is. And we're coming back to that now. Let's say you're on the set and you have a Rec 2020 monitor for your hotshot director and Rec 709 monitors for everybody else. You can tell the camera, okay, monitor 1 out is Rec 2020 and the other 2 are Rec 709. The camera will then say, okay, I know they're shooting a movie for DCI P3 color space, and the camera will do whatever color transforms are necessary to show you that image on a Rec 2020 monitor, so you see a nice representation of what you're going to get in the movies. And the camera takes care of that automatically, so you're set up for whatever you have on the set there. Better frame grabs. We've improved the frame grabs. You can now freely say from which image path you want to grab your frame grab, monitor 1, 2, and 3. If you grab an HD image, you'll see the aspect ratio that your sensor mode is within 1920 by 1080 in either JPEG, TIFF, or DPX. But now you can alternatively, in any sensor mode, any recording mode, also grab an ARRI RAW image, and that will be at the full sensor resolution in the .ARRI format. Not only that, but that will also work remotely from any of the software, and we right now here have Pomfret LiveGrade set up to talk to this camera, so Julien can mess around with the look, but he can also download an ARRI RAW screen grab and put it into the Pomfret as kind of a thumbnail to show you what your look was like. Very useful. Next is improved image quality. Now that we have more horsepower, there are a couple of things we can do that we couldn't do before. One of them, we have an optional noise reduction. It's off by default, but let's say you're shooting and you don't have enough light, you want to go to, I think, what I usually hear is 1280 ASA is okay, but above 1280 you start noticing the noise with the Alexa. So if you go above 1280, you can turn the noise reduction on. It's a very mild noise reduction. I tend to not be a big fan of noise reduction, which is why I decided it's off by default. But if you need it, you turn it on. It's really good. It's our own noise reduction. We have our own color scientists that create all the software. It's a very good noise reduction. You can use that for higher ASAs. We also have a better defect pixel correction we stole from the ALEXA 65. You know, they have a sensor 3 times as big, so they have to be more concerned about defect pixels. And so they created a new algorithm that deals with these defect pixels, detects them, and then eradicates them. And so we use that same algorithm in the ALEXA. And if you want to, you can bake in one of the 3D LUTs and record that. Now, most people who shoot with the ALEXA, most feature films, most commercials, most TV series, will shoot log C, either ARRI RAW log C or ProRes log C. This is great because it preserves the most amount of information, the most amount of dynamic range, but it means you have to do a color correction step in post. For most of you, probably not a problem, but we also have a lot of people who shoot soap operas, telenovelas with the ALEXA, and they don't have time for color correction. So they bake in a look, and then they transmit. They shoot, edit, transmit. We have a company in Berlin that does 45 minutes of finished material per day, every day, shooting with ALEXAs, and they just bake in a look and they go because there's no time for color correction. All right. Next is a very simple one, but a very useful one on the set. In the ALEXA XT and the Classic, you could switch the camera to regular speed mode, 0.75 to 60 frames a second. And if you wanted higher frames per second, you had to switch to high speed mode, and then you sat there for 20 seconds and waited while Martin Scorsese is breathing down your neck, slightly uncomfortable on the set. So we've changed that. With all the new horsepower we have in the camera, there's now just a single speed mode. You want a speed, you choose it from the menu, you push the button, the speed is set. There's no switching back and forth anymore. I think that's going to be very useful. And then the last feature, the new media bay and the new drives. On the side of the camera we have a new left side of the camera, and we accept new media. There is the new SXR capture drive. We have some increased frame rates and a RAID function. I'll explain each one of these. Starting with the new drives, the new capture drive. They're called the SXR capture drives. And with the SXT camera, you now need an adapter for every one of those media so we can be able to be so compatible. So here's the adapter for the new SXR capture drives. But since the rentals have a lot of the older media, we said we're going to be compatible with all the older media. So for instance, here we have an XR capture drive. That's the current capture drive. If you take a look here, there's a little yellow ring there, which of course our marketing people call the golden ring. It's not yellow, it's golden. And so for this, we also made a golden adapter that goes with this yellow drive. And then for the new cards, they come in 2 flavors, 1 terabyte and 2 terabytes. One has a red collar, the other one is a blue collar. Yeah, I thought the most logical thing would be to make a purple adapter, but it looked so ugly, I just couldn't do it. So we finally decided to go with gray. So with these drives, you have the gray adapter. Looks different from the yellow adapter. And then there are 2 more adapters for S/S and CFast 2.0. So all these media can be used with the ALEXA SXT camera. Here's a list of all the supported media: SXR capture drive, XR, S/S Pro, S/S Pro Plus, and the Lexar CFast 2.0 cards. Now, for the new Sony S/S Pro Plus card, we'll support that in the next software update. We couldn't get that into the current software for the ALEXA SXT. And when you're using the XR and SXR capture drives in the ALEXA SXT, you need the Codex Production Suite 4.1 for downloading the footage. Now that is included with the dock, and it's free of charge available for owners of the old docks. You get a 30-day full functionality Codex Production Suite. And after 30 days, you can either purchase it. I think it's $600 for a year subscription. Or if you don't purchase it, the Production Suite features disappear, but you still can download to your dock. So you still maintain the ability to download footage to your dock. There are new capture drives, as I've mentioned, 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte. They're very, very reliable. That's the most important thing we look at to make sure these are reliable. And they have a new housing that's very robust. And one of the most important things about everything in a digital camera now is the heat. These things take 20 watts of power, which means they generate 20 watts of heat, which is quite a bit in such a small, tiny package. So we worked very closely with Codex to make sure there's a surface here that we press the drive to the camera so we can then transport the heat away in the camera. That's a huge, huge issue with these new drives. They come in 1 terabyte and 2 terabytes. and you need an adapter, as I said earlier, and they're not compatible with the older cameras simply because the interface is just too fast for the older cameras. Now here's a little comparison chart. Here are the older drives, golden, and if you record in 16:9 ProRes, you can record about an hour, hour and a half, 1.7 hours onto these older drives. The new 1 terabyte, 3.5 hours, the 2 terabytes, 7 hours. In ARRI RAW OpenGate, half hour, 1 hour, 2 hour onto these new drives. Now you may ask, who wants to record 7 hours onto a 2 terabyte drive? And there's two answers to that. Number one, this 2 terabyte drive was built for the ALEXA 65 because the 65 has massive amounts of data and we wanted the largest drive we can get. So it wasn't really meant for the SXT, but it works with the SXT. It's available as an option. And number two, people are actually buying these for the SXT. Part of it, I think, is comedies. They like to come on the set, turn the camera on, and then never turn it off again. So the actors can improvise without the cut. You know, they don't like that. And it makes the editor's life very tough. And the other thing is, I think we're all getting used to having bigger and bigger drives. I'm an old film guy, so I'm used to 10-minute magazines. But that's kind of gone by the wayside. So I think most people are buying these for the SXT, but we also see some people buy these for the SXT. However, these are mostly used for the ALEXA 65. And then you can also see that the data rate is much, much higher on these new drives. All right, with these new drives, of course, also there's a new dock, which is the SXR Capture dock, which uses a Thunderbolt. Where is it? Right there. It's Thunderbolt 2. There's 2 Thunderbolt 2 connectors on this thing, and that's really good because it makes data transfer really, really fast. This comes with a free copy of the Codex production suite, and it's not compatible with the old drives. It uses the new drives. Oh, and Codex told me I need to tell you that if you have an old drive, there are upgrade packages, upgrade options available for anybody who has an old drive to upgrade to the newer drive. Increased frame rates. We have been able to increase the frame rates of some of the formats within the Alexa. There are some examples here. This is the whole thing. You can find this on the website. You don't have to memorize all these numbers right now. What I have done here is these are all the 14 recording formats, even split out into the different flavors of ProRes. And then here you have the maximum frames per second for S/S, CFast, XR capture drive, and SXR capture drives. The ones marked in green is where the SXT camera is faster than the XT camera. And you have the XT speed here in brackets, and then the SXT speed is the one before the bracket. The one in mint green is where the SXR capture drive is faster than the XR capture drive. So there's some advantages. I've broken this down because it's a really big list. This is if you shoot with S/S Pro or S/S Pro Plus cards. These are XT camera, and this is what happens when you put the same card in an SXT camera. All the green speeds are increased, and they're increased by this much. So if you shoot ProRes HD 4x4, which is really the most popular format, you get an increase in 36 frames a second, going from 60 to 96 frames a second. 96 is a really nice speed because it's a multiple of 24, and DPs tend to think of in multiples of 24. Also here, ProRes 2K, 60 frames a second more on 60 here, so going from 60 to 120, that's really nice. And then the one thing I see more and more is people shoot ProRes 3.2K, and here we've been able to increase from 30 frames a second to 70 to 50, and then here in 4x4 to 30. Now, with the CFast card, we get even some more advantages. All the ones with a star, there's this where the CFast card is faster than the S/S Pro card. So here we also have some advantages. Now being able to do ProRes 3.2K, even in 4x4 XQ up to 50 frames a second, and 4x4 72 frames a second. So that's a really nice feature to have. XR capture drives are about the same as the CFast card, except for this guy is faster than the CFast card, and SXR capture drives are faster than the XR capture drives. And I've tried to compare that. This now is a slightly different comparison. Here you have the XR capture drives in the SXT and the SXR capture drives in the SXT. So by using the new drives, you also get a frames per second increase. Next one is the RAID. On the drive, for technical reasons, we're only using half the drive capacity for ProRes recording. We're using all the capacity for ARRI RAW, but only half for ProRes recording. And that has always bothered me because it's a waste. You have a drive laying around that's not doing anything. So we came up with a solution which is a RAID. RAID is a redundant array of independent drives, and it means you record the footage twice, so you essentially have a backup on the media. In case anything happens, you always have another one available. Now, some people have said, well, if you can use the old drives in the SXT, why do we have to buy new drives? And the answer is you don't have to buy new drives. You can very happily use the old drives. Everything is fine. However, there are some advantages to the new drives. And if you want to take advantage of those, you'll buy the new drives. What are these advantages? First of all, the new drives are faster and the new docks are faster. So you get faster download speeds. And as Julien can attest to, download speed is a huge thing. It means he can go to bed earlier, right? Yeah. That's a huge thing. Whenever I talk to the DITs, I say, what do you want? What's your Christmas wish list? They say, I want to have faster download speeds. So new drives, new docks, faster download speeds. You have higher capacity. We already talked about that. And then for some of the recording formats, you have higher frame rates. So that's, if you need any of those, you want to have the new drives. All right, that was it for the ALEXA SXT. There are some other notes I'd like to make. One of them is an announcement. We now have something called the ARRI metadata bridge. This is to fix a problem we've had with the metadata. Metadata is information about the primary image you record, and it has become very, very important because it allows people to work faster. Shows like Game of Thrones rely heavily on the metadata to process all the information they pump through their system, and visual effects really relies on the metadata now to know what lens was used, what was the focal length. It is very helpful. However, there was a problem. People would shoot ARRI RAW or ProRes, and then whenever it came time to send images to the visual effects house, they would convert those images to either the DPX file format or the OpenEXR file format. In that conversion, however, the metadata did not make it across. Metadata got lost. There was no standard way to convert the metadata. So the people who really needed the metadata never got it. We have a color scientist in Los Angeles, Joseph Goldstone, who's actually talked to a lot of the post-production houses there, and he wrote a software library that now maps the metadata from ARRI RAW or ProRes into OpenEXR or DPX. And we're making this available free of charge to any of the vendors who do this conversion, and they're going to build it into their systems, and we already have a whole bunch of beta testers. So very soon this gap will be bridged, and the visual effects people will actually get this metadata. Next of all, we have a whole bunch of supporting software for our cameras. There's the ARRI RAW converter, which allows you to, it's free for, all these are free of charge downloads. You can convert ARRI RAW on your own to an image. It's not really meant as a production tool, but it's meant as a little checkup for the DP. The DP can download this, do a little bit on their own to see what their ARRI RAW images should look like. Then there's the ARRI color tool, which allows you to create the ARRI look files. And there's the ARRI meta extract, which actually extracts, as the name implies, it extracts the metadata from an ARRI RAW or a ProRes file and makes essentially an Excel spreadsheet out of it. There are a number of online tools available, from a camera simulator that allows you to play with the camera menu without actually having the camera, all the way down to a lookup table generator that makes lookup tables to create display color spaces. We also share a lot of code with other companies in this industry. So whenever you're going to a post house with some ARRI RAW files, for instance, they already know how to use this, how to process it. And there's an interesting thing that has happened. When we started sharing the ARRI RAW debayering engine, which is the piece of software that makes a color image out of a piece of ARRI RAW, a lot of other companies says, oh, that's nice, we'll put it in, but we have our own that is better. And we said, okay, that's fine. One case that was actually true, Colorfront did have a better debayering, which really upset our engineers. So they went back and they then made their own new better debayering. But what has happened is a lot of these companies have realized that in order to do this, you need 1 or 2 color scientists on staff the whole time. And that's very expensive. So a lot of these companies have stopped making their own debayering engine, and they're using now our ARRI debayering engine. And I think that's a trend you're going to see more and more, and that'll hopefully standardize things a lot more in terms of debayering ARRI RAW. All right, there are a couple of things we kicked out, and that always makes me happy when I kick out things, because I'm trying to keep these cameras as simple as possible, and sometimes that means cleaning up. DNX HD is not supported by the SXT anymore. I don't see anybody crying. It was a really good idea at the time when we did it for the XT, but then a month later, Avid came out with native ProRes support in Media Composer, and nobody wanted DNX HD anymore. The fiber remote option is not supported anymore. We had something called the iOS SDK. A couple of people wrote software for an iPhone that could control the camera. We're all migrating these people now to the camera access protocol, which is a much better way to talk to the camera. And then we kicked out some recording media. Between these 14 recording formats, the different recording media, playback, stop, recording, we have this huge matrix now to test every time we do new software. And in order to reduce this testing matrix, we kick out some of the older drives.